clear. Next we'll discuss the measures to counter inflation. How to counter inflation? So just like we have 2 or 3 major reasons, increase in money supply, then increase in demand and decrease in supply. Similarly, there are 2-3 measures to counter inflation. First one is monetary policy. So if you have to decrease the money supply, how to curb inflation is you have to decrease the money supply. So if you have to decrease the money supply, which type of monetary policy you want to adopt? You want to adopt expansionary monetary policy or you want to adopt contractionary monetary policy? So obviously you want to adopt contractionary monetary policy. So by decreasing the money supply in the economy, you can counter inflation. So this is one tool through which you can counter inflation. The second tool is through the fiscal policy. Fiscal policy also we discussed that fiscal policy is related to fisc. Fisc means treasury or consolidated fund of India. So fiscal policy is decided by the government. So first one is tax. Again the tax is of two parts, direct tax we have and indirect tax we have. I think basics of direct and indirect tax we have already discussed, and in detail we will discuss in taxation chapter. But direct tax is nothing but which is directly being paid or which is paid on income and wealth of individuals and firms. This is not the 100% correct definition of direct taxes, but for now we will stick to this definition only. In the taxation chapter we will discuss the impact and incidence wala definition, but here the direct tax is a tax which is on the income and wealth of individuals and firms. For example, in individuals you have to pay personal income tax, the firms they have to pay corporate income tax, and a number of tax we have, wealth tax which has been abolished, then succession duty. All these are the direct taxes. And indirect tax is on production and distribution, of goods and services. So whatever goods and services, for example, if you have enrolled with super profs, so in that case you have to pay some service tax because the institute is providing you some services. But from the institute perspective, suppose we purchase this whiteboard, this tube light. So whatever this whiteboard or purchase, so this good has been produced by somebody, some Camlin company is producing this thing. So whenever you are producing the goods or you are giving the services, as well as when you are distributing these goods and services, you have to pay some tax. These taxes are known as indirect taxes. The example is on production you have to pay excise duty, then you have to pay custom duty, then you have to pay service tax, then this GST, VAT, all these things are the example of indirect taxes. So now the question comes, that's to counter inflation. It means the target is, let me tell you the target, you have to decrease inflation. And how to decrease inflation we already discussed, by decreasing money supply, decreasing demand or increasing the supply. These are the basic things. So now the target is clear. My question is, to decrease inflation, tell me direct tax should be increased or direct tax should be decreased. In case of taxation, in case of fiscal policy, one tool is tax. So this tax is divided into direct and indirect. So direct tax should be increased to decrease inflation or it should be increased to decrease inflation. So direct tax, which me and you guys you have to pay, so direct tax should be decreased. It should be increased, not decreased. So when this direct tax will be decreased, the money available in your hand or my hand is going to decrease. It means consumption is going to decrease, or we can say the disposable income. The disposable income is going to decrease. And when we have less money in our hand, we cannot buy more goods and services. So when we cannot buy more goods and services, that is going to decrease the demand of goods and services, and that is how you can decrease the inflation in the economy. Then in case of indirect taxes, so indirect taxes like excise, custom, service and all this thing, just like we discussed, suppose the raw material price of this pen is 20 rupees, over which you have to pay some excise duty of 10 rupees. Now it is 30 rupees. Now my question is, how to make this 30 rupees as 25 rupees? This is how you can say that inflation has decreased by 5 rupees. From 30 rupees to 25 rupees is my target. How to do it? First one is decrease the cost of raw material, which is very much not possible. So how to do it? Excise duty. You have to decrease the excise duty. Make it 5. It means decrease the indirect taxes. When the indirect taxes will be decreased, the cost of production is going to decrease. And when cost of production is going to decrease, the production is going to increase. And when production is going to increase, this increasing supply can take place, and this is how we can curb the problem of inflation. So this is first tool. Taxation can be the first tool through which, or the fiscal policy through which you can counter inflation. Now the second tool under fiscal policy is public expenditure. It means expenditure done by the government. This thing you can explain very well with public expenditure. One example is through MG Narega. So using MG Narega, if suppose the government has increased the outlay of MG Narega from 10,000 crore to 1 lakh crore, suppose, it's not the actual figure, but suppose MG Narega outlay government increased from 10,000 crore to 1 lakh crore. So that is going to increase the liquidity in rural areas, that is going to increase the demand by rural folks, and that is going to increase the inflation in the society. So if you have to counter the inflation, so public expenditure should be decreased. When public expenditure will be decreased, the money supply in the society is going to decrease, and that is going to decrease the demand. So this is what the second tool. Next we have the third tool. The third tool is government borrowings. So under this government borrowings, government can borrow from two entities. First one is government can borrow from RBI, and government can borrow from general public. General public, we discussed Kisan Vikas Patra, National Savings Certificates and all different bonds issued by the government. So through RBI, if government is borrowing, suppose this is Government of India and this is RBI. If government is borrowing from RBI, in return Government of India has to pay some interest. And as per the normal economic rational man concept says, if you are borrowing and if you are paying some interest, you need this money. It is not possible that Government of India is borrowing from RBI and keeping this money in its locker safely. This is not possible. This does not make any sense. So why Government of India is borrowing from RBI and paying some interest? Because Government of India has to infuse liquidity in the economy. Government of India has to do some expenditure. That is why Government of India is borrowing from RBI. So if Government of India will borrow from RBI and will infuse that liquidity in the economy, so that is going to again increase the money supply, and that is going to cause the inflation. But our purpose is to counter inflation. So to counter inflation, government borrowing from RBI should be decreased. And from the general public, suppose Government of India in this case is borrowing like this. So from general public it should increase, so at the money supply available with the public, that is going to decrease. And when money supply in the society decreases, that is going to decrease the demand, that is going to decrease the inflation in the economy. So in government borrowings from RBI should decrease, and government borrowings from general public should increase. So this is the second measure. Fiscal policy is the second measure through which you can counter the inflation. Now the third measure is supply management measures. So if I want to ask you one question, that this monetary policy affects what part? The demand part or the supply part? We can have cost push inflation, or that is dependent on the supply side, and we can have demand pull inflation. So this monetary policy basically affects which part? The demand part or the supply part? Actually it affects both, but more it is going to affect the demand one. Monetary policy majorly affects the demand, although it also affects the supply, because supply is given by the firms, and if there is less money in the economy, so the rate of interest at which these firms are getting loan from the banks is going to increase, and when that rate of interest is going to increase, they will take less loan, they will do the less business expansion. Less business expansion means the supply will be constrained, but majorly monetary policy affects the demand. Similarly, this fiscal policy, this taxation, public expenditure, government borrowing affects what? Demand part or the supply part? Again the same thing is, it affects both, but majorly fiscal policy also affects the demand one. Now the supply management measures, they affects the supply part. So using the supply management measures, how to counter inflation? First one is import of the commodities. So of course if you will import the cheap commodities, that is going to increase the supply of the commodities in the economy, that is going to curb the inflation in the economy. The second one is check hoarding and speculation. This we already discussed multiple times, that if you will be able to check hoarding and speculation, for example, whenever the onion prices increases, so the state government put onion into Essential Commodities Act, so that these hoarders, they will not be legally allowed to hoard this onions in their godowns. So if you are able to check hoarding and speculation, that can also counter inflation in the economy. Next we have the ceiling prices. Ceiling prices means a maximum price being fixed. For example, onion cannot be sold by anybody for more than 50 rupees per kg. This can be one type of ceiling. So the ceiling prices is also one of the major, but again not very effective in democratic countries. Then we have investment to the producers. So suppose in case of this agriculture commodities, India basically faces a lot of inflation due to agriculture commodities, also known as food inflation. So you have to incentivize this agriculture sector, or you have to incentivize the producers, and these producers means the farmers. So how to incentivize these farmers, in detail we will discuss in agriculture chapter, but during last lecture we also discussed that minimum support price. This farmer assures that whatever I am producing, the price not, because what actually happens in economics is, when supply is going to increase, the prices are going to decrease. So if majority of the farmers, they started producing wheat and rice, so that there can be a situation arise where the prices are going to decrease. So a minimum floor price being assured by the government, and that is known as minimum support price. So you have the option either to sell at mandi or to sell to FCI. If the prices of the mandi decreases and they become less than this minimum price assured by the government, then this farmer can sell to FCI. If this farmer is getting more money than this minimum money assured by FCI or minimum support price, then this farmer can sell to this mandi. So you have to incentivize to the producers. One of the tool is minimum support price, then you have to give more and more loans and number of things. The connectivity should be better. So there are a number of things to incentivize the producers. And the last last supply management measure to counter inflation is APMC. So APMC introduction I will discuss here. What is APMC? APMC is Agriculture Produce Market Committee. So this first is, agriculture is a state subject. So different states, they have enacted their different APMC acts. So it's not like from tomorrow union government can dictate that this APMC, these mandis will be liberalized, from tomorrow there will not be any mandi. Actually what happens is, suppose this is one farmer A, and this is farmer B. this farmer, maybe these two farmers are in the adjacent districts, or this farmer A is in Delhi and this farmer B is in Haryana, and they want to sell their. So suppose farmer A wants to sell. So first thing this farmer has to do is you have to register with this mandi. This APMC mandi will be there, and this agriculture produce market committee, there will be a mandi registered with this. So suppose this is mandi 1. So this A has to register with mandi 1, then only A is allowed to sell the commodity in this mandi. And from this mandi it will be by using some commission agent, some middlemen will be there here also and here also, and afterwards it is being sold to the retail customer. Similarly, the same thing is going to take place for this farmer B. This will be mandi and finally it will be retail customer. But suppose the potato of farmer A is good and the potato, the onion of farmer B is good. So this potato is only available to these retail customers, they are not available to these retail customers. Similarly, the good quality of onion is available only to these retail customers and not to these retail customers. So this is not possible. Similarly, this is not possible. So what happens, suppose in case of some perishable items, potato and onion is not a problem. Suppose you have some perishable item, tomato, so the shelf life will be 2 days, 3 days, 4 days at max. So in case of this APM, farmer A is not allowed to sell to these retail customers, or this retail customer cannot visit the farmland of farmer A. Here this vice versa is not possible, here also this is not possible. Similarly, this retail customer go to the farmland of farmers, and here also it is not allowed. So why it is not allowed? To understand this thing, APMC, when it was ipso facto, APMC is not a negative concept. When the state governments they enacted APMC, it was the need of the hour. When we got independence, let's discuss some history of APMC. When we got independence, at that time the farming, the agriculture sector was not that good. So what these farmers they were doing, 80% of our population was dependent on agriculture. So what these farmers they were doing is they were taking a lot of loan, a good amount of loan from the money lenders. And when they were not, and because Indian agriculture is dependent on monsoon, and suppose the monsoon is not good in that year, so these money lenders they started visiting the farmlands of these farmers. Suppose this is farmer A, this is the farmland of A, and this is one money lender. So these money lenders, during the time of when there was harvesting of the crops being produced or cultivated by A, at the time of harvesting, this money lender visited the farmland and they were forcing this farmer A to sell the commodities at less prices, also known as stressed selling. Even if this farmer don't want to sell the goods at this price, suppose the money lender is saying I want to purchase 100 kg of wheat in just 200 rupees, and in the market the price of this 100 kg of wheat is 500 rupees, but still this A cannot refuse, because A has taken a loan from this money lender, and there was not good financial literacy as well as normal literacy among this A, B, C, all these individual farmers that they have. So at that time these money lenders were misusing this thing, and when they were directly buying the goods from the farmlands of the farmers. So that is why the state governments enacted this APMC Act, under which it is mentioned that no money lender is allowed or nobody is allowed to directly purchase the goods from the farmlands of the farmers. So the purpose of enacting this APMC was good, to decrease the misuse of power, of this muscle power, financial power, misuse of this power of this money lenders or any entity. So at that time the concept was good, but now there is a need of liberalization of APMC. Now these retail customers or maybe companies, they should be allowed to directly purchase the agriculture goods from the farmlands of Punjab. Liberalize, but that liberalization is only till the for items and not for this wheat, rice and all these things. This is what the APMC Agriculture Produce Market Committee. Under this act, this farmer has to first take registration, has to do registration with this mandi, and then only this farmer A is allowed to sell to this thing. Now farmer A cannot sell to this retail customer. This is not allowed. It means common present. This year budget, government said that there will be a common agriculture market, and across India that will be known as National Agriculture Market. So the structure will be like, if now they can sell the commodities to this retail customer or this retail customer or this retail customer or this to any retail customer can sell your goods. So this is what the national market structure will be like, but at present this is not allowed. Only few states have liberalized the APMC Act. So if you will able to liberalize the APMC Act, the wastage of at least these perishable items due to this mandi and all this red tapeism, that can be decreased, and when this wastage of these goods will be decreased, so the supply of these goods is going to increase, and when the supply will increase, the inflation is going to increase. So this is what the impact of inflation that we discussed and the measures to counter the inflation. In next lecture we will discuss the inflation of recent times, of last maybe 8 years, 10 years we'll discuss, and what are the recent reasons of inflation in the Indian economy, and afterwards we'll discuss few definitions related to inflation. What is deflation, what is disinflation, skewflation, agriflation, lowflation. The small definitions we'll discuss during next lecture. Thank you.